Enlisted has been around for quite some time at this point. In fact, if I'm counting correctly, Enlisted's first alpha open tests were over 5 years ago. Since then, we've had dozens of major updates, hundreds of minor patches, and countless changes to the game. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is pretty obvious. How is Enlisted today compared to years ago? Is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. Let's jump into it. So the biggest and the most obvious change from old Enlisted that we have to talk about is, of course, the merge. Now, for those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, Enlisted actually used to be separated into multiple different campaigns, each of which had its own tech line with unlocks that were more or less specific to that campaign. And whenever you played in that campaign, you only played on specific maps, like in, say, the Normandy campaign, you were only in Normandy maps. This was changed back in early 2024 in favor of the system that we have today, where you play as a faction. The old system had some really cool and great things about it, like you could choose what maps you were playing on, which is a very big problem that we have in today's Enlisted. The old campaign system also had a lot more kind of historical flair to it, I guess is the word for it, since weapons were more or less locked to the historical battlefronts that they were used on. So you wouldn't see things that really didn't make any sense, like an MP3008 at D-Day. However, the campaign system also had a lot of problems with it. The biggest one for sure was the lack of players. Campaigns like Normandy were very popular and they'd be chock full of players, while the lesser played campaigns like Moscow were completely dead. And a lot of times whenever you queued into those campaigns, they were just you and 19 AI bot squads all playing together. This just isn't really fun, and it really isn't sustainable. Every new campaign that they would release would just make the problem that much worse and fracture the player base even further than it already was. On top of that, balance was just non-existent, to say the least. A brand new player would queue up into the game and drive around in their Stuart and be shot by maxed out players using, King Tigers or Panthers and things like that. Absolute top of the line equipment. It would be like if you queued up today as a BR1 player and you could just casually queue into maxed out BR5 players. It just didn't make any sense, and the seal clubbing back in the day was just so undeniably bad. And then we also, of course, had the issue where really common weapons that were used in World War II, like, for example, the MP40, were in every single campaign, and so you'd be forced to unlock it and buy it multiple times for each campaign. I can't tell you guys how unbelievably annoying and sad it was to be going through a new campaign and you realize that you were spending hours and hours to unlock the exact same MP40 for the 5th time. It just killed so much motivation to play the game. All in all, the campaign system was really interesting and engaging, but ultimately, it just wasn't really that good of an idea. It simply wasn't designed well. It wasn't sustainable. As neat as it was, it had to be replaced, and at least for this point, Modern Enlisted definitely wins out, hands down. Next up change is pretty easy, the Enlisted Economy. Now, Enlisted has had a lot of different economic systems for gaining equipment and new soldiers. I think since I started playing almost 4 years ago, there's been probably 4 or 5 different systems. At one point, we even had like a full-on gambling loot box system for earning new equipment. It was crazy. Each system has, of course, had its ups and downs, but I will say that the current iteration has a big, massive, single advantage over the rest. The costs. Guys, when I first started playing Enlisted, it would take hundreds of hours for even a premium player to unlock everything for one faction. Even just a single mid-game unlock like the BARA2 would take upwards of 3+ hours of non-stop grinding to unlock it. And then on top of that, you had to hope to God you had enough of these little silver tickets to even be able to buy the gun for your squads and be able to play with it. Since then, the grind of Enlisted has been reduced by something like 60%, I think, which is kind of unreal when you think about how much time you can still sink into the game. So, another big point for Modern Enlisted. All right, now let's get to the actually controversial stuff, starting with historical accuracy. Now, anyone who has watched my channel for long knows that I don't really care about historical accuracy. It's just not something that I've really ever cared about or been a major priority for me. I'm a gameplay first kind of guy, Now that being said, I do fully admit that Enlisted's historical accuracy has taken some major hits over the years. In the past, the devs were really careful about placing weapons or vehicles only in the battlefields that they actually were historically at. And, well, that really did lend itself to a much more immersive experience, even for me, where I don't really care about that kind of thing. Now, as long as there isn't anything egregious like, Cold War era AK-47s running around in an obvious World War II situation, then I don't really care. But again, I understand why some people might. And these days, you can kind of see a more gameplay-focused Enlisted, where you have Super Pershings invading Guadalcanal. And again, I personally don't really care for this, but I fully understand why some people can be frustrated and are saddened by that change. So for this point, definitely goes to Old Enlisted. And then our last one here is a doozy, and it's probably the most controversial, the Battle Pass. In 2025, the Enlisted devs changed the Enlisted Battle Pass to be shorter, much more frequent, and they removed gold orders, which were this kind of ticket currency used to buy old Battle Pass weapons from the shop. Now, this really made a lot of players upset, since a lot of players really enjoyed the choice that they had in which rewards they earned from the Battle Pass. For example, as it stands today, if you were to go through the Battle Pass, you could earn, say, 4 guns for Japan. But if you don't play Japan, then you don't really care. Well, in the old system, you would just get a ticket and be able to buy whichever gold order for Japan that you wanted. Now, the new pass also increased the amount of rewards, since Battle Pass owners receive 4 of the Battle Pass weapons rather than the single gold order in previous passes, and they also earn them much more frequently. And finally, another minor thing that we should probably note is that the vehicles in the current Battle Pass are just cosmetics rather than full-on unique and fully upgraded vehicles as they've been in the past. Although I think this is more of a technical change that Darkflow wanted to do in the background, and while it kind of is worse for players, I don't really think this is the big issue when the Battle Pass comes up. I think this is kind of a tough one to talk about and a tough one to rate, since personally, I actually really love that we get more rewards in the current iteration. I hated before where I just got one Battle Pass gun and I had to choose between these 4 different guns, and I only got one of them. Now when I play, I get 4 of the same one, and I get them way more often. But on the other hand, I also really dislike how short the Battle Passes are themselves and how frequently they pop up. And again, I don't mind too much that we don't get a gold order system, since we're receiving the new weapons regardless, while before I oftentimes wouldn't even get to see them. I do still understand why people are so annoyed that a lot of the older Battle Pass weapons are gone and they don't feel like they have as much choice as before. All in all, guys, I kind of think this one just washes out, since there's really big pros and cons for both of these systems. That is all I'm going to be talking about in this video, guys, but there are countless changes that I could go through from today all the way back in time to early 2020 when Enlisted first had its early access. What do you guys think about current Enlisted versus old Enlisted? How are the maps? How are the guns? How's the balance? How are all of the massive changes and countless changes that have happened over the years to the game? Do you guys prefer Enlisted today, or do you guys prefer the nostalgia of old Enlisted? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. I want to hear you guys' thoughts, as I'm sure the Enlisted devs are probably curious to hear as well. Without anything else, though, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.